Hi, my name is Charisse. I am the writer of the Beautiful Ashes blog, and this is our first official video. Yay! This video is actually a testimony, and I felt it was important to share because many times we go through things and we overcome. But there is someone out there, a brother, a sister, a friend that needs to know that God has not forgotten them, that God is still working out things on their behalf. So I pray that it encourages you, that you understand that God never leaves, He never forsakes, and that the things that bother us, that they do bother Him. He is near and He cares. So here we go. Back in 2016, I noticed that I was missing my menstrual cycle a lot. It was irregular from the very beginning, but it became even more irregular in that I would go long periods of time, sometimes 6 to 8 months, without getting a cycle. And you know, I wasn't pregnant, so I wanted to know what was going on. So I started to do some research. We all do this Google thing and we self-diagnose ourselves. Then we become convinced that we're gonna die. But in this case, I researched hormonal imbalances and I came across different ones, endometriosis and a few other things, but P.C.O.S. jumped out at me, and I didn't understand why I felt like it had to be that one. I mean, endometriosis sounded close too, but P.C.O.S., polycystic ovarian syndrome, that sounded, everything just came forcibly to me that it has to be this. And I wasn't sure of it. Like, I had no prior knowledge of it before then. So I couldn't have said within myself, this is it. But I felt like that was it. Now I know that it was God, directing me to show me that that was the condition that I was dealing with. So I went to the doctor and I told her my suspicions, and at first she said, "You don't look like you would be a candidate for PCOS." Because she said, usually it makes you gain a lot of weight. At the time I was a really small lady. I was small. It was really small. But I had already started to gain some weight. It was just that I guess I became a normal sized person as opposed to a really small person. But yeah, she said it didn't look that way, but she would still send me for the test. And I remember she sent me, the doctor, he did the ultrasound, and it came back that there were follicles around all two of my ovaries, and one of the ovaries was actually twice the size of the next one. Everything there was irregular. There was nothing normal there. So actually the follicles around the ovaries, they look like cysts, and that's where polycystic ovarian syndrome comes from, because it appears like a cyst, but really it's a follicle. So he did it. He did the ultrasound, and it came back that that was the impression, PCOS. We did the blood test to confirm, and then the diagnosis was there. It was confirmed that it was PCOS. In asking the doctor, well, how do I deal with it? How do I cure it? Can I cure it? And she said there's no known cure. I don't recall if she said there's no known cure or if that was something I saw online, but she led me to medication like Narcolet, which stops you from bleeding out if you have a period that's too heavy, because some of the complications that happen with PCOS, you get, yes, long periods of time without having a cycle, or a menstrual cycle, or like when it actually comes back, you can bleed for a long time. Sometimes I remember there were times that I had a menstrual for like 2 weeks straight, and there were other times that I would just have a really painful one. It would be horrendous. It would be so much pain I wouldn't know what to do with myself. And there were different things. My body would feel lethargic very often. Sometimes I would just be weak, feel like I have no energy to do anything at all. It also is, it puts you at risk for type 2 diabetes, for hypertension, and there were a lot of discomforts with it. But I took birth control, which helped to regulate the period for a period of time, and then I was tired of that. I stopped taking that too, and I stopped taking any medication at all. In 2018, I felt broken because this hormonal imbalance also, it puts you in a position where you don't know if you'll be able to have children or not. It can be very difficult, or you may not be able to have at all. And I've always, not always, but at the time, I started to realize that I wanted to have children. And I don't think I knew I wanted to have children until I was diagnosed with P.C.O.S. And then the possibility would be less. You know, the possibility wouldn't be as great as before the condition, before I knew I had the condition. And I felt broken on Mother's Day of 2018. And I remember I wrote this poem called Confessions of a Mother in Waiting. No, what was it? Confessions of a Childless Mother? Something. But it was a poem, and I cried. I cried. I felt bad because I saw all the mothers rejoicing. And yes, I rejoiced with my own mother and my grandmother, of course. But I went in the bedroom afterwards and I cried because I couldn't understand why I would have this thing. Why is this thing still there? You know, why do I have it? You know, of all the people that could get it, why me? You know, and coming on to 2019 now, I missed a lot of periods in there as well. But what was significant for me was that in the middle of 2018, coming on to the end, I started to have consistent periods, and I was shocked because when your normal is irregular, you know, it's like when something normal happens, you don't expect it. Therefore, I was shocked. So I said, well, maybe there's hope. Maybe God wants to heal me. I never asked him. To be honest, I don't recall ever asking God, do you want to heal me of this condition? I don't recall asking him that. But I had hope. For the first time, I had hope. And I started to pray concerning it. And I would get the olive oil and I would rub my tummy. And I would pray at night before I go to sleep. And ask God to release this womb and to allow normalcy to occur. Before, I didn't have that kind of faith. I didn't believe that it was possible. Like, I knew it was possible, but I didn't know if it was possible for me. I didn't know if this was my cross to bear, if this was my burden to carry. I didn't know if the Lord even wanted me to be a mother. And I decided not to be presumptuous about it. But from the time I saw it running normal for 3 months straight, I prayed. And I prayed. And I prayed. And I fasted. And I prayed. And I asked the Lord, actually, no, I'm running ahead of myself. After I started to pray. It stopped again. And I don't know if to say I lost hope, but I wasn't focused on praying about it anymore. I wasn't. One night in the middle, well, closer to the end of 2019, probably October, November, somewhere around there, I was at prayer meeting at my local church, and I heard my pastor. We were all down at the altar praying, separately. But even though I was praying my own prayer, it was not about my issue. And I heard my pastor, all of a sudden, I heard him say something about reproductive problem with reproduction. And everything that I was praying just went out of my mind. And I listened to what he was saying. And he was praying about this reproductive problem. He was praying about blood regulation. And I asked the Lord, Father, he praying for me? Like, you wonder, is it me he's praying for? So I started to agree with him. Yes, Lord, I started to agree with him. And I said, well, I accept it. I agree. Because I never said to him that I had that problem. I never said to him that, and like go through the whole process of explaining it and everything. I never did. So when I heard it, I was very, I tuned my ears. So within a few days after that, I had a cycle. I had a menstrual cycle. However, it stopped again. And I didn't know what it meant. I didn't know if it meant that this miracle was not going to happen. I didn't know what it meant. But within a month's time, the Lord worked things out for me. First off, the ultrasounds would have been expensive, and I didn't have the money to pay because, I wouldn't have had the money to pay. And the Lord lined me up with someone who actually went on my behalf, took me to a doctor, a well-known doctor. He has a lot of influence, and when he heard about my issue, he took a form, wrote up for me to get the ultrasounds at the hospital, which would have been for free. But he also said, but don't forget, at the hospital you have to wait. And I live in Barbados. Here we have to wait when you have an appointment because the list is so long. So he was saying maybe 2 to 3 months. But he said, well, what to do? Put some influence on it. We went to the hospital the very next day, supposedly to set an appointment. But God is so good. The favor of God is so real. I got my ultrasound done the same day. And I have to say I had to be God, because the lady that he placed right there, like, she was in charge of who goes in and who doesn't. And I had met her on a previous occasion, and we hit it off. And through that, God used that to push me forward so that I wouldn't have to wait. When the doctor now was checking, she checked all of the abdominal organs and everything, and she said, I don't think you have P.C.O.S. And I'm like, wait, what? Huh? Tell me again. And she said, everything looks normal. And I said to her, in 2016, the doctor said to me that I have P.C.O.S. I even have the report to prove it. I never got rid of it. She said, but everything here in your uterus looks normal. And I was like, wow. And she continued to look, and she said, yes, Yes, it's normal. And I became emotional because, well, this was a breakthrough. And it honestly, I would love to tell you that I had all of this great faith. Yes, God is going to heal me. Yes, yes, yes. But I did not know what to expect. So to hear that, you know, my that condition was no longer present within my body, it was amazing. It was the power of God being shown to me in a personal way. It wasn't someone saying it to me, but it was me finally like really experiencing touching the hem of its garment. Furthermore, I don't even feel like I reached out enough to touch the hem of its garment, but he still allowed it to happen. However, yesterday, I went back to my doctor now, and he printed off the report, the official report, and it says no problem, no problem, no problem, no problem. You name it, no problem. Every organ is good. Every part of my pelvis is good. No abnormality detected. And it brought it so forcefully back to me yesterday that God is faithful. That God is so, so faithful. And I compared the two reports and saw the difference, that one was doom and gloom and the next one was the grace of God, and now the possibility is there. God just wiped my slate clean, because honestly, I was not, when I first was diagnosed, I was not seeking after God like I should. And I see this as grace being enacted, and I have to say that God was in it with me from the beginning. I didn't know it then. I know it now. God was with me, because when I had the information, when I was looking for it online, it was God that directed me to see that it was PCOS that would have been affecting me. So that when I went into the doctor, I knew what to expect, and I didn't freak out. I didn't cry. I didn't, I wasn't a mess. Because that he used that to calm me, to make me at ease. And this is long enough, but I just want to say that when the word tells us, just a sec. Yes, so when the word tells us that many are the afflictions of the righteous, I mean, to be honest, God in his word, he promises us trial after trial. He promises us situation after situation, but he delivers us from all of them all. And I think it's important to remember that he delivers. It's important to remember that he's with us and that he cares, that he loves us. Sometimes you may feel discouraged. It will happen. You are human. It will happen. There are times that you will feel as though God has forgotten you. You see other people getting through in things that you want to really excel in. You see things seeming to happen for people that seem not to be happening for you. But honestly, God is so faithful. He is so true. And if he makes you a promise, I'm telling you, you can afford to trust God. You can afford to stand upon his word. You can afford to hold on to him, even when what you see doesn't exactly line up with what he said. You see, sometimes we get caught up in what we see. That's why we don't walk by what we see. We don't walk by sight, but we walk by faith. So I want to encourage you today to genuinely walk by faith, to genuinely not look so much at the things around you. When discouragement comes, remember the promises of God. Remember that he's with you in everything that you go through. Remember that He never leaves. He never forsakes. Remember that no weapon that's formed against you will prosper. Remember that you are His own, His precious possession. Remember that He will give others. He will give the life of others for yours. Remember that you are loved, that you are cared for, and that He will sort out all things concerning you. Remember that all things do work for your good once you love the Lord and are called according to His purpose. So, God bless you. I pray that this is an encouragement to somebody that needs to know that God is real, that He's faithful, and that He hasn't lost His power, that the blood of Jesus still works, and that He's good.